Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lori, and I am the Community Marketing Manager for Handle. If you're unsure of what Handle does, we are a platform that's purposely built for building material suppliers, managing lien rights management, waiver compliance, as well as a payment portal that handles everything from check by phones all the way through credit cards. Today, we are joined by Scott Peper with MobilizationFunding. He is the Chief Executive Officer and has been for over 10 years. Thanks for joining us today, Scott.
What I want to talk about is mobilization funding in my normal day job. We work primarily with construction subcontractors, some general contractors, suppliers to construction we work with as well. Think like specialty lighting or flooring or roofing. So we work on all sides and we pay tons of material suppliers. So if you're on this call, there's a very good chance in the last 10 years, we've probably made a loan to one of your subcontractors and sent you a wire. You would never know we really exist because we open accounts that are opened in the construction contractor's name. We help fund that account, and then they use those dollars to pay for materials or labor. And it helps them, for all of you guys that are on this call and know construction, the cash flow cycle of construction is a very difficult one to operate under. And what I mean by that is a lot of money goes out up front. And when you're doing progress billing or milestone billing, it's very difficult for the construction subcontractors to actually manage their way through that cash. And so what they tend to do is lean on their supplier relationships, or they try to lean on one project to pay another. And for all of the folks on here that are credit managers, we all know what kind of pain that can cause, not only to the contractor, but also to what we like to say is subs, suppliers, and other vendors. And so a subcontractor that can finance their project using all of their supplier terms or all of their subcontractor terms, like a paid when paid scenario, there's probably not too many problems. But there's also a lot of subcontractors that don't get the opportunity from their suppliers or others to pay when paid. And so hence the quagmire. So I like to give a little example of cash flow challenges in construction. There's no other cash flow cycle, or very few, I should say, that are the way a construction contractor has to manage with. And so just imagine if we all went to restaurants at the beginning of every month, every restaurant had to order their materials, they had to feed all their customers, they had to make all the menus, they had to get all their employees paid, and they did that from the first of the month all the way to the 30th of the month. At the end of every single meal, instead of swiping a credit card, they took a receipt, they got a phone number and an address, and then they waited till the end of the month. They invoiced every single customer that's come through in those 30 days. And then they gave every one of those customers another 30 days to pay. It would be really difficult for any of us to ever see a restaurant anymore. And so as ridiculous as that sounds, that is the nature and the reality that a construction subcontractor in particular has to live with. And hence the fact that any suppliers here that are on this call have to deal with that same thing, because those are the customers that you're serving. You're trying to sell products, you're trying to sell materials or items or services that are onto a project. And so that, when I say cash flow construction is broken, that's what I mean. It doesn't mean we're here to fix it this call, but what it does mean is we're here to talk about it and figure out the best ways to manage around it. All right, so what is cash flow? Cash flow, if for a contractor, really has nothing to do with what they bid. It has nothing to do with their profit. Because you can have a construction contractor who has a extremely profitable job with 30-40% margins, but actually is negative and never is cash flow positive. If they have if they have COD terms with their suppliers and they're paying their subcontract labor or their traditional labor every week, and then they're paid by their customer in 60 days or more, you could have one of the greatest margins on earth on your bid sheet, but you're never going to be cash flow positive. You could also have someone that's operating at 10, 11, 12, 13% plus retainage taken out. And if they have all the right perfect terms, they could be cash flow positive right from the very beginning. For example, if they could pay everybody when they're paid, no problem. If they're using subcontract labor that they can pay and they have terms with their suppliers that keep them maybe like 30, 60 days out, you could be cash flow positive pretty well. What we like to try to figure out for folks before we make a loan or even as part of it, and what we really focus a lot of our time on, is helping commercial subcontractors understand what the cash flow is of their actual project before they ever have to start on the job. And the reason I say that is because if they understand what they actually have to spend of the cost on the project and when, they can determine where their cash flow is going to be hurt and how quickly they're going to spend the cash or how many dollars they need to invest in that. So we created this cash flow calculator. The reason I included this on the slide is not because any of you may need it, but if you want to refer your subcontractor to a cash flow calculator, a project cash flow calculator, it can really help and benefit them. It's free. It's on our website. We don't charge for it. We're not in the business of selling cash flow calculators or project cash flow calculators. We're a lender, but we do have a very strong passion to help educate not only the construction world and the users of commercial construction, but also any sub-suppliers and vendors that are also help servicing them. So having this cash flow calculator where it can benefit any of the subs, or I'm sorry, where it can benefit suppliers and material vendors is by when you can see the cash flow on an actual project and a subcontractor comes into a credit manager and says, look, I really need 45 or 60-day terms with my materials. When they show you the cash flow of the project and why they need that, and how they're going to be paid, and that when they're paid, you're still going to be paid, or when they're paid, they can pay off the balance of what it is, or maybe they can pay you a deposit now, but they can't pay you the balance until they're actually paid. And you can see numbers and real data. It's much more easier for someone to give them extended terms or different terms versus, oh, you want 60 days. Oh, why? Because maybe you're just not going to pay me and use that money for something else somewhere else. And that's actually a detriment to a vendor, as you all know. So what we educate our clients on, and anybody that uses our calculator, is information is the most powerful thing. You don't want to ruin your relationships, whether they're your customer and a general contractor or whether they're your relationships with a vendor, because you need both in order to be successful. But information and data is what's critical. Just like we give advice to them when you're using this cash flow calculator, say, look, guys, Mr. General Contractor, I'm happy to take this job, and I see that I have 30-day terms here. But I need to show you, if you extend this to 45-day terms, I'm going to fail on the project. So I need to know if I'm paid in 30, I'm paid in 30. If I'm paid in 45, I need to show you what happens in 45 days. And I might need to be able to negotiate different terms with your customers at that point. Or they could come in and negotiate different terms and help justify why they need 45-day payment terms from your supplier vendor instead of the normal 30. So it's already painful enough for a lot of commercial contractors. If they order something in the first or second day of the month, they can't invoice till the end of the month. And so when that bill comes due on the third or fourth of the month, and they just invoiced for it only 5 days ago, that can put extraordinary circumstances on them. So these are things that this cash flow calculator can help manage and show them. Here's some questions. And again, I wrote these questions as if you were a credit manager with a supply house or a vendor of some kind, and you're trying to think about giving your commercial subcontractor terms, or they're asking for additional terms that you may want to consider for them. So can you order the material you need right now? Well, if they need to order it right now, the next question is, can you bill for that material that you have on hand? Can it be billed or stored? Will you use it immediately, or could you buy it in different shipments? The reason I put those questions in there is because a lot of commercial subcontractors are focused primarily on price. They're focused on the price they sell a project for, and they're also focused on the price they pay for materials. Now, I'm not trying to say that that's not important, but what I am trying to say is it's not the only important thing. Price matters, but a lot of times what they're doing is they're making decisions based on price of something without having any consideration for the other terms that are associated to that price. So where you might be able to save 2 or 3 percentage points or 5 percentage points for materials, if you're a commercial sub, what you're not realizing is if those come with different terms of when you need to pay for them, you may be taking that savings that you have and actually putting yourself in a situation where you actually are required now to invest twice as much cash into the project than you might have otherwise managed. For example, we had a commercial sub that had about $1 million contract. They needed $200,000 to get it running smoothly. However, they had the opportunity to get a 5% savings from a material supplier, and they wanted to take advantage of that. The problem, even though it was a $450,000 material order, and 5% of that is significant, $22,000, it was going to require that they would need now $500,000 instead of just $200,000 in order to get to the point where they were going to be cash flow positive on that project. So for the benefit of a $22,000 savings, which ultimately, if all things go smoothly, you can realize as profit, if you need an additional $300,000 to actually execute the job now because of the terms associated to that $450,000 material order from that vendor versus another, you now are in a real pickle. And if you don't have those dollars, you now put the whole project at risk because you now can't pay for labor, you can't pay your material supplier. And if that's the case, you might not ever be able to take advantage of the $22,000 savings. So knowing these things, and the reason I put this out there now is knowing that if a customer is asking for a lower price, what might be more valuable to them actually is better terms. Maybe they can make a deposit, which is good for you all, but maybe they need better terms on the long run. Those are the things to negotiate other than just price, especially if a customer is coming in just asking for a discount.
I do have a question. When you're asking these questions, is this a good time to ask to see the subcontractor's contract with the GC in order to get some of these answers?
I think it would be a great time to do. I believe in the theory of our President Ronald Reagan, trust but verify, So someone comes in with a contract and a cash flow, like they should have no problem showing you what their contract terms are, provided you all have a good relationship. Maybe they're worried that you might see the pricing or not, but letting them know that you just want to verify, hey, if you're asking me for a consideration, that I want to make sure you actually do have 30-day term or 45 or 60-day terms instead of 30. Those are valuable things to know, and I think it's more than fair to ask for that question, especially in lieu of reaching out to the GC directly, which is always a tenuous spot that a commercial sub might not want you to do. And trust me, I get that. They don't want us reaching out to them anymore as a lender than they would the material supplier either. Are you getting joint checks from the GC owner? Those are key things that are important. That helps you all, certainly, but it does put them in a tough spot, at least in their own mind, that they might look weak or they might look bad. I personally don't think that's the case. If I was a commercial subcontractor, and I've had this conversation with many of our subs before, if I'm trying to negotiate to be paid in 30-day terms and they're telling me, no, it's paid when paid, then I might say to them, okay, great. Well, if you're not going to be able to pay me in 30 days, if it extends to 40 or 45 or 60, I'm going to have an issue with my material supplier. So you know what? I'm just going to put the job account for materials on you then, and you can order the materials at the price I've sold them to. And of course, the subs and GCs are like, no, that's part of your contract. It is part of my contract, but so is getting paid in a reasonable amount of time. And I can't meet my relationship with my supplier unless I can trust that I'm going to get paid at a certain time, because I'm going to sign up for 30-day terms to pay that supplier for a certain price. And that's going to be relying on when I get paid from you, because I can promise you, they're not going to let me buy $400,000 worth of material unless I can put it on a job account. And I can't pay for it unless I get it paid from the job. So we have a choice. You can either pay me in the 30 days, or I need you to issue a check for them, or you order it directly, or what do you want to do? And it creates a good conversation, not a tenuous one, but it creates just reality. And if you show up with a cash flow tracker and a contract and your terms, then you can have a real conversation and come up with a real solution versus everybody trying to just push off risk onto another party. And so that's a real good way to ask that question, aside from just trying to bring up joint checks, just to add some additional perspective. I love the question, how can we best help you? What do you need? Sometimes when a contractor comes in and asks for a better price, you might want to ask them, hey, what do you really need? How can I best help you? Is it just price? If you have all the cash in the world, are you going to pay me up front? And no problem, I'll give you a discount. Or do you need terms? You can create that conversation, which will open up room for them to probably be more honest or more comfortable to share what they're really trying to solve for, which ultimately I've found will help you as a credit manager get to a better spot for yourself, but also a better spot for the sub. And that'll help them create a better relationship or utilize your relationship with them such that they can not only trust you, but you can help them get what they need on the GC side as well. The difference between a job account and a house account. Why do I put this on there? Well, actually, at one of the events Lori took me to, in Tampa, a lot of the credit managers in the room, there's probably 50 or 60 credit managers. They were talking about, you know what? You're buying material from me. It's day 30. You owe me the money. This is it. I give you this credit. I need you to be paid, or I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Now, not everybody was doing that, but there were some people in the credit department that were really laying that out. And I remember asking a question, hey, would you have ever sold this money to them if it wasn't related to a project account? And they said, absolutely not. And I said, okay, well, if you're only selling them $400,000 or $500,000 of the material because it's on a job account, which means you know that the only way they're going to be able to pay for it is from the job, then wouldn't it be prudent to give them terms to pay that are associated to the job account? And of course, the credit manager says, no, of course not. I can't finance the whole job. Say, okay, great. Well, if you can't finance it, I promise you the sub can't finance it. So what are we going to do? So maybe it's time to help work together to push it onto the GC. And the reason I put job account and house account is because it's good to be aware of that now in that scenario up front. So you can solve for something like this prior to actually getting into that spot where now you've given them 30-day terms. It's now day 40. You can't extend $500,000 out anymore because everybody has their own DSOs and money that needs to have cash flow problems, or cash flow needs to come through. But what's not effective, in my opinion, is to sell something based on a job account to someone can't pay for it unless the job pays, but then be upset, frustrated, or worse, create problems when they're not paid yet and they're not paid yet. And so having that conversation up front and really communicating that can put everybody in a better scenario, which keeps everybody's DSOs and payments and whatnot in better spot. Because if you can extend at a higher price, but better terms, and you're comfortable with getting paid from the job, then you can actually increase your margin, assuming you can handle the cash flow burden and give the actual contractor what they need instead of a better price. So something to consider on that.
They said that on their system, if it's a job account, they feel like they're protected more as far as their risk, but on a house account, they don't have any protection there. So they actually charge higher prices just to put it on the house account.
I agree with them 100%. And that's why I'm referring to job accounts specifically. A house account, couldn't agree with you more. I would look at house account versus job account as two entirely different risk profiles as well. I would also look at them with having completely different terms. Letting people order on a house account and not paying, like if it's a restaurant, credit card or not, I think it's hard to extend terms on a house account. Most often, unless it's a brand new business, most things they're trying to purchase should probably go to a job account. Now, there's different trades that might need, standard conduit tubing or whatnot that they like to keep on inventory or things like that. But most things are going to a job account. I think the exception is a lot of material ordered, like if it's an electrician doing service work and they're just, keeping a certain amount of inventory on every truck that they're going to use. Yeah, there's definitely some risk associated to that. And I think that comment is very much warranted, not only by price, but also by whatever other risks need to go in place. So we've kind of tackled some of this already, but peace of mind, value of cash flow management, this is stuff that we speak to the subcontractors about. And the reason I included this is I wanted you to have a little bit of a vision into the mind of the commercial subcontractor and what they're actually thinking about and pain points versus just what they might actually tell you they need, because they're not always aligned. And the reason being is I think a commercial subcontractor, oftentimes they want to have this relationship. They're going to feel more comfortable putting pressure on their supplier relationship than they are their general contractor relationship, as an example. And what pressure is coming down on them from the general contractor is naturally going to be kind of pushed down to their suppliers because they'll feel more comfortable with that. And so I think if you can grab them earlier in the process when the project's starting and create a method into which understanding where their pain points are going to be such that you'll be able to help them leverage the job or the GC or a term that they could use, you can start to get a better outcome up front. And so like handling those risk mitigations, change orders, weather, site conditions, those are types of things that actually create problems for everyone. But if you're helping handle those things, like if they're ordering materials for a large change order, it would be great if you knew that up front and you said, actually, if we're ordering this material for a change order, then we want that to be joint checked. Or, hey, let me joint check this with you for this change order, because that can help you actually get the change order approved, right? Maybe you could try commercial contractor to have the GC or the owner issue a purchase order for these materials, so that you're not at risk to me for the materials. You can be just at risk for your labor portion if you have to get started on it. Things like that you can really start to help, I think, navigate around a conversation. They may or may not be able to do that, but it definitely can help identify a problem project manager on a site that may not have good intentions, that you're waiting 30, 60, 90 days, and then they're trying to issue negative change orders. Change orders don't get approved, but you ultimately end up getting paid, but the sub doesn't. And the sub's asking you to lean the job and all that kind of noise. Some of that stuff can get eliminated early if you can identify it prior to starting.
So we do have a couple questions. One, what kind of customers are you financing? Is it the ones that the credit managers are declining credit to, or is it just everybody?
We really work with all types of commercial subcontractors in just about any trade and scope. Depending on how fast they're growing is typically where customers will utilize us or our loan program. You know, they have the opportunity to take on that next $2 million, $3 million, $4 million project, but they don't take it on because they know what kind of pain it's going to cause to pull cash out of their normal business to try to execute that job. And then going to banks won't give you money for future growth and future success. They'll give you plenty of money based on your past performance and how much you can handle from your normal debt service coverage ratios or financial analysis. So those are the typical subs that we work with.
Another question is, just like technology, is this something that could put a credit manager out of their job? If you're paying everything, they don't have anything to collect.
No, not at all. Well, you got to remember, the credit manager has given a subcontractor the ability to buy material from them on some credit long before they've ever come to us. So when a customer comes to us, they already have their supplier relationships. They have a contract they want to utilize us for. They want to know what they can do. All we're doing is helping them pay those things on time per the terms that they've been able to negotiate. There's no method for us to take out a credit manager or the value of a credit manager, because that credit manager has already either made a decision of yes, no, maybe so, prior to ever getting to us. Where we can actually help is very oftentimes there's been credit not provided to a subcontractor because maybe they are growing too fast. So they're growing so fast that they were breaking through their limits on painting and stucco and coatings and etc. So one particular contractor had a $2 million credit limit, but they get paid typically in 60 days. Well, they're working for very large project groups, like large projects, great owners. And the problem is the credit manager's like, I just can't give you $3-4 million. It doesn't matter how good the project is. Well, we were able to partner on a phone call with them, explain what I've explained to you guys about how we operate. And because we could then prove to the supplier that we would be able to pay them directly and we had control of the payment coming in on the project, it gave them a lot of comfort to know they could get paid and get paid directly. And we created a little 3-party agreement that the contractor signed off on, that the supplier agreed to. And then we said, sure, well, when we receive the money for this pay app, we'll pay this supplier directly. So it kind of removes the credit risk if they receive the money and then they don't pay you.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.